Hi everyone, so this video is a really completely jump on and speak on it type of vlog video. I was just up working on YouTube stuff and having a look at things, and an old video of mine came up from this time last year. So this time last year I was in a hospice with my husband who was dying of brain cancer, and that video, I watched it all kind of as a way of processing stuff. So I'm in a stage now where nearly a year on from my husband's death, I am now acknowledging not only that he's not here, but what happened in the lead up to his death. Obviously, that was really challenging and painful at that time, and it's been something that I really haven't wanted to think about. I'm not saying I'm going to sit and think about it either, but I am acknowledging some parts and some things that happened and just kind of going, that was painful, and almost like watching that video, I almost wanted to give myself a cuddle, because I know what I was going through at that time, and the confusion and the fear and all of that stuff that I was going through. And it got me thinking, because I've had a few comments on my YouTube over the last few weeks. I've had them before, but because I did a video about Father's Day, I had a few comments on that, and a few things were said across social media, and it was along the lines of me being cold or unfeeling or not seeming that sad. And actually, when I watched that video in the hospice, the video that I was talking was, I'll link it up, it was called Will I Cope? And the day before doing that video, I'd been really low, really at a point where I was breaking down and terrified of losing Ross, knowing that it was happening, knowing that he'd already gone, essentially, because it was brain cancer, and then he was just breathing, but that I didn't want to let go. I was terrified, and I was really, really sad. And so watching that video, I'm very articulate in that video, and I speak well, and I articulate my feelings very well, but yet to the untrained eye, it might come across as maybe not cold, but how is she able to talk like that? So I wanted to remind you, and I don't have to do this, I don't feel sad or angry or anything like that. I just wanted to address it because there's others that deal with grief and death and sadness in exactly the same way that I do. Some people avoid it, some people bawl their eyes out, and some people are quite calm and have moments of tears and actually articulate how they feel very well. In fact, I saw a quote not long ago which said, some people cry with tears, some people cry with words. And I'm a words person. I cry, obviously, but I always, because the way my brain is now wired and because of the way I train my brain to think positively and to seek out the good, I look for lessons, I look for dealing with reality, I look the tiger in the eye, I look at all the things I'm scared of, and I look at and I talk it out and I work it out and I make sense of why I'm scared, and I aim to let go of things. And that doesn't mean I have no emotions. It doesn't mean that at times along this process I haven't cried my eyes out and bawled and been angry and sad and all the normal things. Might not put that on YouTube because, do you know what? I don't have to, and that's not how I want to deal with things. I don't want to. I'm not saying, because I have cried on here, but I'm not saying that I has to, I'm not sanitizing my emotions on here or how I feel, but it's just not helpful for me at all. And I genuinely don't and haven't along the process spent hours crying. It isn't the way that I process stuff. It isn't the way that I deal with things. And for some of you, that might come across as cold, but you have to remember that's your own interpretation of it. The love that I have for my husband, you can question that all you want, but I know who we were, I knew how I felt and feel about him, and he was, and still is one of the most significant people that will ever have been in my life, and an incredible person, and I miss him every day. I miss things that we did together, I miss jokes that we had, and it's, that's hard sometimes. But I also know who we were and who Ross was as a person, how he dealt with things, how we were very matter of fact, more matter of fact than most people would be. Ross had autism for starters, so he was black and white direct, and I'm pretty direct with things as well, and I could take that, and that's how we talked. We talked about the life and death stuff. We talked about how he was going to die. We talked about his funeral. We talked about that stuff. You might not like that, and if you haven't gone through that, or perhaps you wouldn't deal with it like that, it might seem really strange, really calculated, cold, distant, whatever you put on it. But remember that it's your feelings towards it. It's not how it is for me. How it is for me is that I miss Ross. I loved Ross. We had an incredible experience. I'm glad he was part of my life. I'm glad he's the father of my children. And I'm also now still happy, still all right. And even if I have that sadness, it's not like a mist over me right now. There are moments of pain, there are moments of sadness, but the other part of my life is really good. And if that makes you uncomfortable, then you must question why that makes you uncomfortable. Because it doesn't make me uncomfortable, it makes me happy. And I know that Ross wanted that for me and the girls as well, for me and my daughters. Okay, so my camera totally cut off because there's zero storage on this thing. Rah. But what I was saying is, I don't need to justify how I feel. I don't need to sit here and cry just to prove how much I love my husband, or the daily grief or the daily stuff that I have to deal with because he's not here. I don't have to do that. I'm merely talking about this because I think it's important for people to know that there's not one way of dealing with pain, whether that's grief or the loss of a job or whatever sadness you're going through. There's not one way of dealing with it. And just because we are taught to be dramatic and over the top, and we're taught a certain way, we're taught to be negative, we're taught that we wear a black veil at the funeral and we mourn, and we're taught that's the way of, certainly in the Western world, to deal with pain and sadness and grief, and that's the acceptable way for people, and that's the way that makes other people feel makes them feel comfortable, which is a weird thing. So when people say to me and give me the sympathy look, which is really well intentioned and loving and all of that, and I say I'm doing okay, I'm doing good actually, it's sometimes harder for people to take than if I said I'm struggling every single day. That would be easier because then people could help. I don't need people's help. Just want to live my life, and I want my daughters to have a good life, and they do. And that's what my husband wanted for us. And I'm not going to live my life for Ross, but that's what he wanted, and that's how he dealt with stuff. He was matter of fact. When he found out he had cancer, he was like, well, I should be dead already. Some people don't want to hear that. He didn't talk like the average person, and that gives me comfort to know that that's how we're dealing with it, and it's cool, it's okay. And yeah, that's it really. So for those of you who watch this and want to comment that I'm cold and distant and maybe I'm not acknowledging it or I'm not dealing with my pain, well, okay, maybe I'm not, who knows? Do you know what? I don't know, I've never done this before, but I can only be honest about my feelings, and my feelings are right now, although there are moments of sadness, although there are moments where I go, oh, man, I really miss you today, or I really miss doing that thing, or I'll think of a comment that we would say or a joke, and I'll remember it and think I'm never going to say that again, and it feels sad. Even with all of that, I've got a great life, I've got a nice life, I've got good people around me, I've got nice things happening, and I feel good, and so do the kids. And yeah, that's it. There is more than one way to deal with something, and I hope that me having documented this journey will make sense to the girls, make sense to somebody else out there, and help you through your journey so you don't feel scared. I remember how I felt this time last year, and I was terrified. I was terrified of whether I would be able to cope. I was terrified of hearing Ross take his last breath, and it was hard and it was painful, and I was okay, and I'm okay now. So if you're in that space now and you're scared and you're going through that, which many of you will be, then just know that you're going to be okay, and even if you're not okay now, you will be. You will be, because you're going to decide to be. And that's what your loved one would want. They don't want you to have a rubbish life. Why would anybody want that? So, yeah, I hope you find some comfort in it. And yeah, hope you're all good. Speak to you all soon.